So grieving came hard for Costello. He saw death as part of the fabric, a way to cover a tragedy with a silver lining, rather morbid in the eyes of most. Costello just couldn't allow the pain to haunt the future. He knew death truly held zero positive aspects, but there just was no other way to move on with hope for those who would continue to live long after their loved ones passed. He was on the precipice of turning 40 and a firm believer that whenever you turn that page, it's time to start preparing yourself for 2 funerals if both your parents were still alive. Hell, so many people lost a parent, if not both, long before turning 40, so if you still had both, there was something to feel fortunate for there. Costello's father was sick. Nobody knew what he was ailing from, but he clearly wasn't well. Costello didn't go a day without wondering what took hold of his father, while also not making much of an effort to reach out and ask. He held grudges much better than he even realized. He and his father shared a similar bravado in this standoff, unfortunately. There were countless conversations Costello had with friends in similar situations, and he always pressed for reconciliation no matter what the circumstance. He knew it was the embodiment of hypocrisy, but he wasn't going to allow others to fall down the same well as him, not if they had any chance of putting differences aside with whoever they were at odds with. Becoming closer with Avery and deciding to run the risk of the tour to Maine, with the follow-up of potentially confessing to a double murder, started to pivot Costello towards extending an olive branch to his dad. He knew his dad tried when Costello was younger. It wasn't Dad of the Year material, but he tried. Plus, he recently hooked him up with a computer. Costello often wondered if he could have tried to accept the effort rather than setting a high bar and giving him a shitty grade. Sometimes expectations are the death of a real budding pursuit for approval. A dad can't be a dad without a child's approval, no matter how good they think they're doing. It was time for Costello to give his dad another shot. He wasn't going to get all soft and roll over, but what's the harm in making a phone call to see how he's doing and tell him about the tour? Then maybe get his advice on whether to continue north into Chicago or take the shortcut through the rough terrain of the Appalachians. Costello was prepared to hear his father tell him he had no clue which path would be best, but at least he knew he could now rest his laurels on the fact that he reached out and tried. Costello and Avery were already working on the details of both passages, so they had good intel piled up for the conversation. He couldn't possibly call his dad with an open-ended question. His dad wouldn't even make it 2 minutes into the conversation if Costello called him empty-handed. Good kids always know exactly how to finesse a conversation with their parents. At least they should. Avery had no idea what Costello had been pondering for the last half hour. She assumed he was thinking deeply about his tour, and she wasn't going to interrupt unless they needed more coffee. After an hour and a second carafe, Costello asked Avery if she thought calling his dad was a bad idea. He explained he's been meaning to reach out to him, and this may be a great opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Check the box on calling him, while simultaneously finding out if he would be intrigued with helping Costello prep his itinerary. With the quickness, Avery told Costello she loved the idea and thought he should do it as soon as they finished their breakfast and focusing on the work they've put into the plans. Costello liked what he was hearing. Avery was taking a huge interest in his life, and he was taking a huge interest in her. Costello suddenly felt like he was on an elevator that broke from its sheaves and was plummeting downward. His mental illness was ferociously showing him the meaning of a manic rebound. Things were going far too well for him. He heard a piano playing So What by Miles Davis. He turned towards the sound, and there was a girl from the betting window at the racetrack. She was playing the piano right in the middle of his apartment. Costello hadn't experienced any delusions in a while, but this was clearly not one that had him fooled. He walked up to her and watched her play as she maintained eye contact without once looking away. "Why are you here?" Costello asked her. She continued playing the piano and averted her eyes from Costello. "You never came back." "Why does that matter to anyone?" Costello asked in frustration. The girl said, "Take the difficult path. It's time to start showing up." Costello felt Avery softly place her arm around his torso. "Are you okay?" Avery asked. Costello was fixed on the girl from the betting window at this beautiful piano. She brought her eyes back up to him and told him to answer Avery. He turned to Avery and told her with conviction that he was talking to a girl from the horse track who was playing the piano. "I know this isn't something you hear someone say every day, but I can't hide anything from you," Costello told Avery with a mixture of bravado and hesitation. He quickly turned back as the song rang its last note on the piano. Costello spun around and his apartment was as it should be, without the mysterious lounge act. Avery attributed this moment to the psilocybin. She told Costello there was an off chance she dosed him more than she planned and he could be experiencing some lingering effects. Costello clutched the bottom of her shirt and exhaled. "I think it's high time I let you in on a bit more about myself," Costello whispered.